Tragic news coming in from Sri Lanka. Easter Sunday has turned into a day of mourning after 6 blasts hit Colombo this morning, killing around 99 people according to the police. Well, at least 450 people have been injured. 2 churches and 3 hotels have been attacked. Top intel sources tell CNN News 18 that the attacks were carried out on the orders of the ISI-backed ISIS and targeted Indians. Sources have also said that Sri Lanka was warned about this attack 5 days ago. News just coming in, CNN News 18 now learning that at least 2 of the attacks in Sri Lanka were carried out by suicide bombers. One at the Shangri-La Hotel in Colombo and the other one at a church in Batticaloa is what we are learning. So 2 of these attacks were suicide attacks. One suicide bomber, Zahran Hashim, was behind the blast in the hotel, and his associate Abu Muhammad was the suicide bomber involved in the church attack. Zaka Jacob, our output editor, is getting us more details on that. Zaka, what more do we know about who could be behind these attacks? Because what we're picking up is that 2 of these attacks at least were carried out by suicide bombers.
Yeah, which is extremely worrying because if that is the case, it also at some level does raise some questions about, the access that these people had to these churches. What we are learning is that Zahran Hashim, we are not sure of his nationality or what his motivations were, but a person by name Zahran Hashim has got killed at the blast of the Shangri-La Hotel in Colombo. Now, the Shangri-La is a 5-star hotel, and it has reasonable security arrangements like you would expect in any high-profile 5-star international chain hotel. We are given to understand that in Colombo itself, about 2 dozen people are, I'm afraid, dead. 1 from the church and 1 from the hotels that were targeted. We're also given to understand that in Batticaloa, which is in the eastern coastline and which used to be a Tamil town, and which also was, at one point when the LTT was running the eastern part of the country, used to be under the control of the LTT. But since the war ended 10 years ago, Sri Lanka has largely remained peaceful. This is the first time we're having this kind of certainly serially coordinated blasts in different parts of the country. There have been minor, sporadic instances of violence where there has been violence between Buddhists and Muslims. But this is the first time that you're having serially coordinated blasts in different cities, in different locations in Sri Lanka. And certainly the casualty count running into the high 20s, perhaps even more than that, it seems to suggest that this was a series of blasts that was coordinated and was carried out by a single organization with the motive to target civilian population. I think it's evident from the places that have been targeted that one, the target were Christians who were celebrating Easter Mass, and the second were expats or tourists who frequent hotels like Shangri-La and the Grand Cinnamon.
Yes. Also, Zaka, what we know is that India had in fact given some inputs to Sri Lanka about a possible attack, an attack of this nature. What was the nature of the intelligence input that was provided by India? What more can you tell us about that?
Well, look, this is regular intelligence inputs that are shared by agencies of different countries. We do know that the Indian intelligence agencies have a close working relationship with some of the friendlier countries in the neighborhood. So this kind of information exchange, intel exchange, does keep happening, but I'm not sure the specific nature of the intelligence that was shared. And it's also quite, surprising that churches were targeted in this fashion, because even in the height of the civil war in Sri Lanka, there were not this kind of, coordinated attacks on the Christian minority, who are a handful in terms of the population spread in Sri Lanka. There have been instances where Muslims have been targeted. There have been instances of violence between Buddhists and Muslims. But I don't think this appears as one of those sporadic incidents. This is certainly an organized group that is behind it. No one has claimed responsibility so far, but it seems more like an ISIS-inspired kind of attack.
Yes, Saka, also for our viewers who've just joined us, just take us through the details of what really happened. What we know is that more than 99 people have died and there were 6 attacks in total that took place today.
That's right. There have been instances of at least two churches that have been targeted. One in Colombo, which is close to the Colombo port, the Caricature Church. It's a Catholic church and apparently a very popular one. And this happened just moments after Easter Mass concluded. And the Catholic Church around the world celebrates Easter Mass at midnight. So this happened moments after midnight. Shangri-La was also around that same time. Again, like I said, the target of these attacks seems to be either churches, whether it's the one in Colombo or the one in Batticaloa, or five-star hotels like Shangri-La as well as the Grand Cinnamon. It seems on the face of it that the target was either people who believed in Christianity or expats who could also be Christian but are clearly visitors to Sri Lanka or expats who are living in Sri Lanka. I think the target was to try and send out a chilling message, whether it is to the minority community or whether it is to international tourists who may come to Sri Lanka. At least that was the message that the attackers wanted to send out. But like I said, I do not think that this is the exercise undertaken by some kind of an amateur group, or this is some kind of result of clashes between two ethnic groups. This seems more like I said, an ISIS-inspired sort of attack where specific civilian populations, specific targeted civilian populations were under the radar of this attack. So I think as the days progress, we will get better information as to who was behind it. But on the face of it, it seems like ISIS-inspired attack.
Yes, also maybe a little too soon to talk about it, but of course concerns here in India on whether there could be any possible Indians also injured in that attack, Saka.
So far, the Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka is not confirming any Indian as having been a casualty of this attack. In fact, the manager of the Shangri-La Hotel in Colombo is an Indian, and I'd in fact got in touch with him, but he had come off to his native place because of the Easter holidays. But he did confirm that he was in touch with his colleagues, and there have been quite a few casualties in the Shangri-La attack. Just want to paint a picture for our viewers. Sri Lanka is an extremely tourist-dependent economy. I think almost 20% of their revenues come from some form of tourism-related economic activity. And it had picked up quite considerably in the last 10 years or so after the end of the Civil War. But now this kind of a coordinated attack where it seems, at least in some of these attacks, certainly expats seem to be the target of the attack. This is something that would be extremely disturbing. The Sri Lankan people have always been a resilient nation. They have lived through 30 years of civil war between the LTTE and the Sri Lankan forces. Just when that concluded about a decade or so ago, there has been a relative peace in the last 10 years or so. Like I said, there have been very, very sporadic incidents in the last 10 years, nothing of this nature where dozens have been killed. So I think it will worry the Sri Lankan people as to the implications of this attack and what may be the fallout of this attack. For now, it certainly is a challenge for the Sri Lankan government, for the forces there, and certainly Sri Lankan society to clearly come together as one, because the intent of the attack was to further the fault lines between different ethnic groups, between different religions. And I think it will be a real challenge to the Sri Lankan society over the next few weeks and months. Just like we saw in New Zealand, for example, a few weeks ago, the entire nation needs to come as one because the intent of the attackers was to further divide these fault lines.
Yes, Saka, be with us and to tell our viewers that tragically and maybe expected, the death toll has gone up. It stands at 129 as of now. Maha Siddiqui is also now joining us. Maha, the death toll has gone up to 129. That's the figure.
Yes, Neha, really tragic Sunday there for Sri Lanka on a day when the Christian community is observing Easter Sunday. We have seen this bloody Sunday for Sri Lanka, where 6 places now we can say have been attacked, 3 churches, 3 hotels. There is an emergency meeting going on. Harsha De Silva has tweeted, a minister in Sri Lanka, saying that the heads of Army, Navy, Air Force, the Secretary of Defense, Secretary for Foreign Affairs are all present there in the meeting. Ministers from Ministry of Defense are taking all necessary emergency steps at the moment. And we also know that the Sri Lankan government government is going to come out with an official statement anytime soon. Now, this is what I've been told by my sources, to look out for a statement from Sri Lanka. The Sri Lankan High Commission here is being very guarded as to what they are saying. That is primarily because, Neha, the information coming in is very rapidly changing. As you are yourself pointing out, the casualty figure has gone up to 129. Remember, this morning we started by information that was coming in of 25 people having been killed and 160 being injured. That has gone up now to 129 being killed and over 250 being injured. This is a huge, difficult situation for Sri Lanka to be dealing with at the moment, Sneha. 1 decade of relative calm after the civil war. Tourism had picked up. Today what we are seeing is that apart from a certain community, which is clear because the attack has been carried out on churches, one of them, the Kuchikodi Church, is a very revered Catholic shrine where people had gathered for a mass. So clearly that community being targeted. Apart from that, the fact that the blasts have been carried out in 3 hotels as well. 2 of them very popular, the Cinnamon Grand as well as Shangri-La, where my sources have also told me that they are places where even a lot of Indian tourists go and stay in. Now, these being attacked also goes to show that this is an attempt to terrorize the people, to terrorize the tourists there. The economy that was only building up with tourism, it is highly tourist dependent. This kind of an attack certainly will be a huge jolt for Sri Lanka. But at the moment, really, the bigger tragedy is the number of people who have died on Easter Sunday. And they are still grappling with the situation. An emergency meeting, as I'm pointing out, is on at the moment in Sri Lanka.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I'm also quoting from what the Minister of Economic Reforms is tweeting. Harsha De Silva, you spoke about his statement also. In fact, he clearly says many casualties, including that of foreigners. So it's fairly clear that not just the civilians, the locals there, but also foreigners have in fact lost their lives in that attack. Maha?
Yes, Neha, because these 3 hotels that have been targeted will be at the moment packed with tourists because this was an extended weekend, 3 days of holidays, including Good Friday, Easter Sunday. This is just the perfect time for tourists to be visiting Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has, over the last few years, really picked up as far as tourism is concerned. The people, the locals there are also very welcoming. People from nearby countries, especially, the interest that the Indians have developed in going to Sri Lanka. Beautiful, picturesque country, excellent locales, and many of these areas really have been targeted. So clearly, at the moment, they haven't really given a breakdown of the number of casualties and whether they are foreigners or largely Sri Lankans. But the fact that these hotels have been targeted and casualties have been reported from these hotels is a clear indication that there will be foreigners in this attack. The Indian mission on its Twitter handle has said that they are still in the process of gathering information. They have put out emergency numbers that Indians can contact the Indian High Commission there to find out if there is any alarm in their families, if there is somebody there in Sri Lanka they want to get more information about. But even the mission has not said anything about the possibility of Indian casualties or those injured because they are still in the process of figuring out, of contacting the government authorities as well as the hospitals. Unless and until the officials themselves go and are able to talk to those injured or are able to get specifics from a hospital, they do not divulge specific information. And this is what we have seen, Sneha, even in the Christchurch attack, remember, whereas there was an initial information about Indians being, having tragically died in that tragedy, in that dastardly terror attack. However, the Indian mission was very, restricted as far as initial information was concerned, because as you know, in a situation like this, it is very easy to create panic by putting out figures and numbers. This is something that missions try to avoid unless and until they have met the people, taken their details, identified them. It is only then they put out the names after having first contacted the families. So we have to wait for that. The External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj has said that the mission is trying to gather as much much information as possible. As we can understand, the situation still remains chaotic there in Sri Lanka because of the number of blasts that have taken place.
Yes, and also, Maha, what is worrisome is that what we're learning after 6 attacks that have taken place in Colombo, at least 2 of these are suicide bomb attacks that have taken place.
Yes, but let me just point out, Sneha, that at the moment there is no official confirmation to any of these reports as to who could be behind these attacks. The government in Sri Lanka is being very cautious in giving out any information. In fact, for now, they have not put out any official statement except the ministers tweeting from their handles about this emergency meeting that is taking place. Let's wait for what their statement says, because this has been a troubled country in the past. We have seen the equations between ethnic groups.
Maha,
also.
be with us. We'll come back to you in a bit from now. Dinesh Gunawardena, MP from Sri Lanka, is also joining us. All right, we'll try and connect with him in a bit from now, but we'll try and get, in fact, more voices from Sri Lanka as well. We've also been talking to residents from Sri Lanka who gave us an idea about the situation, with the government also issuing an advisory already asking people to stay indoors. Well, that is what the government, the local authorities have said. This in context of the attacks that have taken place. 129 is the death toll, is what we are learning. That also could go up, is what is being indicated by authorities. These are 6 serial blasts that have rocked Sri Lanka today, injuring close to 500 people and killing more than 129 people. These blasts have taken place in a closely coordinated fashion in many parts of Colombo, in churches as well as in hotels. As far as India is concerned, India is keeping a close watch on the situation, given the fact that the sense really is that there could be Indians, in fact, injured in those blasts. No confirmation just yet, with the Minister of External Affairs, Sushma Swaraj, also saying that she is in touch with the Indian High Commissioner in Colombo and keeping a close watch on the developing situation as of now. Meanwhile, the High Commissioner of India in Colombo has opened up its helpline for those in need of assistance. Those numbers, in fact, we can share with our viewers. Indian citizens also in need of assistance can get in touch with numbers. These numbers that have been given out by the High Commission of India. Blast that hit 2 churches as well as 3 prominent hotels in Sri Lanka today in Colombo. It comes as worshippers were attending Easter services in these churches that were hit by these serial blasts today. Dinesh Gunawardena, MP from Sri Lanka, is joining us. Thanks for your time here. We do understand and do appreciate you've taken out time on a day like this. First of all, we are really sorry for what has happened in Sri Lanka today. The death toll itself is 129. Is that a confirmation?
Well, it could be more. It is it's a sad a day that we are going through at the moment, when at different times these explosions have been installed and carried out by the parties that have been planning this type of thing. Also on Easter Sunday, innocent people, tourists who have come on holiday, very clearly is to further destabilize our society.
Is there any information that you can share with us at this point in time about who could be behind these attacks? What do we know about the attackers just yet, sir?
Government is and the forces are in investigation, and it will be known before long of who the parties are, because it is not at one place. It is at so many places, and so many elements have been brought in to plan this. It is one side of it. Secondly, yes, the side of attacking the hotels, locating at hotels, churches, and the innocent people.
Yes, we at India, of course, are concerned about whether there could be any Indians also injured in these attacks. Anything that you can tell us at this point in time, sir, about that?
Very clearly, it is seems to be very clearly a local plan to create chaos. The government has also been going hard on the underworld on one side, and on the other side, all over the world, also in the key cities, this type of extreme activity hindrance has been caused, not only Sri Lanka.
Yes, I understand, but I was in fact asking you if there is any information about any Indians being injured in those attacks that have rocked Colombo today?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. We are not at all able to say that this has been inspired by any international, especially our neighbors. There is no such evidence at the moment.
Okay, but some intel reports do suggest, and we have those reports, that ISI-backed ISIS is behind these attacks.
Yeah, that's why I said the government is aware of the possible suspects the last few weeks and the actions taken. Therefore, they will come out with a more detailed and responsible statement, and we will be able to come out with such response. We only appeal to the country to be calm and to take notice of the sad events that have taken place.
Of course. You know, I want to ask you, there are some reports also that suggest that there was some intelligence inputs about an attack of this nature. This was given, in fact, by India to Sri Lanka about 5 days ago. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Well, there has been such information and advice that has come in, but we are not sure these verify so far. But the government has been on alert in the last few weeks, and it is clear that internationally also there is a very organized attempt that is running across Europe, across Asia, and so we should take it more seriously before making official statement.
Yes. Also, if you could give us an idea about the number of people who have been injured, how is that situation being dealt with?
The government, as well as citizens and civil society groups, all are moving in Sri Lanka, as they have done before, to help all those who have been injured and who has been rushed to hospital and been treated. The numbers are still not totally clear.
And what's the kind of advisory that has been given out by the government today?
Government is very much actively supporting through the security forces, and medical services is on duty, whereas voluntary groups have come in, which we appreciate in such a situation.
All right. Thank you so much for, in fact, sharing with us those inputs. You've given us information about what really is happening in Colombo in Sri Lanka as of now. The death toll, as is being said by authorities, is expected to go up. It's expected to go increase more than 129. 129 is the figure that is being confirmed as of now. Maha Siddiqui is also, in fact, getting us more details. Maha, what more can you share with us at this point in time?
Well, the information that is coming in right now is that the ministers and even the other officials in the government in Sri Lanka have all now panned out to the various blast sites. The ministers are themselves inspecting the areas and are seeing that there is calm now after the panic that we saw erupt after these 6 dastardly blasts in Sri Lanka on Easter Sunday. Also, what the Sri Lankan government, through its ministers, is trying to communicate is that people should not panic because of the kind of rumor mongering that is happening. There are at least 2 locations which have been put out on various social media handles as having been attacked, which has now been denied by the government. A Red Cross building and another, another church, which there were rumors about where blasts had taken place, those rumors are now being dispelled. And that is an appeal that has been made by the President of Sri Lanka also, that people should not panic by the kind of misinformation that is now circulating, and they should only go by what is or will officially be told now. For the time being, people have been told to remain in their houses, not step out, certainly not go to any place that could be crowded like a marketplace. People have been asked to stay indoors. This is an advisory that has been put out in Sri Lanka at the moment. As far as the casualties and as far as foreigners are concerned, yes, the Minister Harsha De Silva has put it out saying that casualties do include foreigners, but for the time being, the Indian mission, the Indian High Commission in Colombo has not put out any figures with regards to the possibility of any Indians having been injured or any Indian casualties in that attack. What they have simply said at the moment is that numbers for assistance have been put out so that anybody who is in need immediately can contact them, whereas the officials themselves are out gathering information, are contacting the government as well as hospital authorities to get more information. It is, it goes without saying, Sneha, that the fact that at least 3 hotels have been targeted goes to show that the aim of the attackers was also to target tourists in Sri Lanka. But since the attack has also been carried out in churches, and one of them being a very popular and revered Catholic church in Kozhikode, does go to show that a certain community was also targeted. This entire long weekend that we have seen, wherein there would have naturally been an influx of tourists in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has picked up as a tourist hub after the civil war ravaged it. It is its economy is trying to get back to on its feet by getting more tourists. This is certainly a huge, a huge damage for them.
Yes.
Moreover, this goes to show that the aim of the attackers was not just to attack that one community, the Christian community, but also tourists, to create terror and panic. So these are the two motives that can be very easily seen through the manner in which the attacks have been conducted. What we are now waiting for is an official statement from the Sri Lankan government that is going to come out any time now, and that will make many other aspects clear, because so far no one has claimed responsibility for these coordinated dastardly attacks in Sri Lanka.
Yes, Maha, the Prime Minister of Sri Lanka, Ranil Wickremesinghe, has tweeted just about 10 minutes ago saying that he strongly condemns the cowardly attacks on our people.